Recorded from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it's the Last Writing Podcast. I'm Adam Dietz. How's everybody doing? Welcome. Still trying to find my voice here in the second episode. At this point, you've heard the first one, or if this is your first episode you're listening to, welcome. Last week we talked to Jordan Lyons on self-publishing. I think it was a fun conversation. Hopefully you learned a lot. I certainly did. The Last Writing Podcast is a podcast dedicated to those who dedicate themselves to the craft of writing. Each week we're going to talk to a new writer from a different genre or field about the craft and their process. Just really get into the weeds. I will have recorded 3 episodes by the time I release these, so it's hard to necessarily say what kind of feedback's going to be received or what people will like or dislike. But at a certain point, I plan to incorporate some writing at the top of the show and some other kind of fun announcements. Just kind of want to showcase some people and some pieces at the start, but we'll work our way there eventually. In terms of showcasing writing, last week I mentioned this. I'll bring it up probably every week, but in addition to the Last Writing Podcast, I've also launched the Last Writing Journal. And that is a platform for up-and-coming writers, burgeoning writers, to showcase their work. In terms of what we're looking for, pretty much anything at this point, under 1,000 words, any genre, any theme, anything you want. But I really want to fill that up with writers. It's hard to submit, so I want to add another hopefully quality place to put your writing. More information on that can be found at thelastwritingpodcast.com. There is a submissions tab there, so don't hesitate. Check it out. Check out the website as well. In terms of things we're going to be doing moving forward, we'll see. I'm still considering the Facebook group and the Instagram group. It's almost like I don't want to set up another social media profile. I don't know why anyone would want to stay away from social media, but I will probably do those things if there's a demand or if there's an audience. We'll just see. But as of now, it's at the Last Writing Pod on Twitter, and then probably supplement that with some other social media sites as time goes on. So last week we talked to Jordan about self-publishing. This week we are talking to Kirsten Grimes, who is a content writer and marketing professional. She's very talented, very intelligent. She's also, not coincidentally, my girlfriend. It's a good conversation. I really enjoyed it. Talk all about a career in professional writing. A lot of people dream of maybe getting a job for a company that is, they grew up loving. I was young. I wanted to write for the Yankees or something, but it doesn't always work out that way. And you can find a career you like, writing for a place you maybe didn't even ever consider or know existed. And this kind of touches upon that. So we talk about, writing on a topic you maybe weren't familiar with at the start, incorporating feedback from coworkers and superiors, injecting creativity into pieces that are maybe a little bit more dry in tone, and a lot of other things, the marketing funnel, etc. So this is an episode for, it's for anyone. All episodes are for anyone, but if you're considering a career in marketing, or you're fresh out of college, out of grad school, and going into that career path, you might learn something. Hopefully. I certainly learned a lot, so I think it's a good one. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get in that conversation with Kirsten. Hi, Kirsten. How are you?
Hi, Adam. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Happy birthday. Thanks for coming on the Last Writing Podcast today.
Thanks for finally inviting me on.
So today we're going to talk about professional writing as it relates to you and your career. Let's skip the small talk. We have a lot of that. So go ahead and just jump right in. Can you tell me what your business does and what your role is as a professional writer?
Yeah. So I work for a small to mid-sized civil engineering firm. And, not the most exciting work, but we, civil engineers, they design roads and business parks and water systems, wastewater systems, drinking water systems, stormwater systems, basically any kind of infrastructure that you would use or see is probably designed by a civil engineer. So that's what our firm does. I am the communications and content strategy lead.
Yeah, let's dive right into the types of writing you do commonly.
The large part of my job is just like ghostwriting, what like people would call ghostwriting. So writing kind of like creative content or expert level content for our industry experts. So like the engineers who are the top of their game and like at the top of our business, we want to get their names out there and promote them and promote the kind of work that they do and their expertise. So we might do that in the form of an article or a press release or just like a blog post or a newsletter, all sorts of different avenues. And I do the writing, but it is under a different name. So it's published under the name of one of the experts that I work for. So that's the bulk of my writing. The other types of writing I do are largely related to public relations. So press releases for the company, talking about when we have new employees or when we've won an award or if we've won a client award, trying to get our name out there into the media and making sure that we're getting recognized for the good stuff that we're doing in the community. I also just do like all the kind of small writing throughout the company. So like a lot of the internal communications, the internal emails for our executives, what might be called executive scripts. So I write talking points for them. And we have like an internal newsletter that we do. So it's wide variety.
Wide variety. I always wondered with these like employee scripts, so it's more talking points as opposed to like actual dialogue, because I often see like scripts in a job description and I think of it as, like you'd be screenwriting or something, someone says something.
I mean, it depends. Like some executives might want you to like write actual like dialogue. So like how you're used to writing screenwriting work or like scripts, it could look like that, like where they really want to have it laid out really clearly. Like a lot of executives in larger companies or like in publicly held companies go through what's called media training. Mm-hmm. So they'll bring in somebody like me or a different PR professional and they'll sit down and like really go through rigorous interviewing so that if they are in a position where they're going to be interviewed by the media, they are fully prepared and they know how to react and they know what to say and what not to say to try to avoid a PR flub. But most smaller companies, don't have those resources or don't have like even the need to have somebody go through media training. So instead they might have a marketing person or a writer on their staff come up with just like more bullet points and talking points that they can refer to. So it depends.
Right. How big is your company?
Just over 100 people.
Okay. So quite small. Of the types of writing that you just listed, which are kind of the more labor intensive?
The answer to that's probably changed like throughout my career as a professional writer. I would say right now, where I'm at, the hardest stuff to write is, labor intensive and difficult, I guess, are two very different things. So like I probably put the most work into writing that's going to go out into the media, like to the general media, that's not going to be put out just by us. So like we'll submit articles, blog posts into different kinds of industry trade publications, and then also just like into, like local media, like the Journal Sentinel or something. Mm-hmm. And I try to really put a lot of effort into that because it's going to ultimately reach a larger audience, obviously, than what our more like targeted internal stuff will see. But yeah, it really varies. It really just depends on the project.
So in terms of coming into this role, I think, a career in marketing writing can be kind of nomadic and you can have a lot of different stops. Did you have a background in civil engineering or kind of what kind of a background did you have in writing or engineering?
Such a well-written question, Adam.
Thank you.
Be kind of nomadic. It can be kind of nomadic. I've never really thought about it that way, but it's definitely true. Yeah, my career path was certainly not linear. Took the 5.5-year plan going through undergrad. So I took my time. I changed my major a few times, but when I declared a major in English, I knew that that's really what I wanted to do. The only thing I really enjoyed doing in school was, art, but I knew I couldn't really make a career, or I didn't think I could make a career out of that. And then reading and writing. After undergrad, I had a few just odd jobs that I didn't love. I worked as a bartender for a year. and I worked in a temp job at a property management company doing accounting, which, as you know, but maybe your listeners don't know, it's not necessarily my favorite thing in the world, numbers and billing. And that's just like kind of the opposite of what I think a lot of creatives are interested in.
Not as glamorous as it sounds.
It's exactly
as glamorous as it sounds. Okay. Yeah.
And then I decided to go to grad school. So I think like many of us at that time, coming of age in the, well, I guess coming of age, we were of age, coming of like adult age, that like we didn't have careers that we wanted, or we didn't have, like, we weren't able to find those jobs that we were kind of promised by taking on all of this debt to go to school, whatever. So I, like you and many others, went to grad school. And I went to grad school with the intention, I think, of becoming a teacher. A teacher at the college level. I never was interested in secondary ed, just too much politics and dealing with parents and stuff that I really didn't think would be very fun. Went to grad school, got a master's degree in English, met you. From there, I was able to actually find more professional writing work. So we both taught, you and I, at the community college level. We taught English for a while. That was really fun. But for me, I didn't find it that creatively fulfilling. So I enjoyed it. I loved my students. I loved like the work, but I still really felt like I was missing out on, I don't know, something that just like didn't feel like the kind of work I was really supposed to be doing. So
financially pretty challenging as well.
Oh my gosh.
That adjunct work. A lot of ramen and taking Bloody Marys to go, things like that.
We were drinking Bloody Marys to go, but it was fun. We didn't think it was fun at the time. We both like to look back with nostalgia at that time, and how poor we really were and how hard we were working, because between even after grad school, but during grad school and teaching, that's just so much work. And then afterwards, if you're working adjunct full time, like you're pulling, how many classes do you think you were teaching like at your peak?
My first semester, I taught 6.
Like I don't think I ever taught 6. That's crazy. That's so many. I think
really
I taught
busy.
probably 4.
Yeah.
Well, I worked for I got a job for a small nonprofit in DeKalb, and they actually hired me on to just kind of help with like general like assistant type tasks. And when they, but they liked that I had a degree in English, so I got hired on probably making like $10 an hour, like super low pay, but needed the money. And they let me like write their emails and a few things here and there. And then the director of the association really liked how I wrote. And so he wanted me to take a bigger part of the, writing responsibilities, help them with their marketing. And I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I didn't know anything about marketing. But I did like a lot of my own research. I took a bunch of HubSpot courses and did a lot of Googling and watched a lot of YouTube videos, and then like somehow convinced them to make me the director of marketing. That was a title I wanted. It
Lofty.
Yes. I was like, let's just go shoot for the stars. But they did it, and came with a not sizable raise, but I didn't really care because I was excited to just like have the work and the title. And I really found during that job that I actually liked marketing. I liked doing professional writing. I found it challenging enough that it like fulfilled me in that way, and that it fulfilled me creatively. And I could at least like, if I pursued the work in a way that I found to be challenging, that it would be enough. And yeah, from there I've had 2 or 3 marketing positions until we moved up here for my job now.
That's right. So in terms of your current job, how did you, without a background in civil engineering, I'm sure it was challenging at first to write with authority on the subject. How did you kind of obtain that necessary knowledge, or what was that process like?
I guess you did ask that in your original question, kind of, but I just instead gave you my life story.
Both are good. Both are good.
Thank you. It's my birthday, so that's a really good question, and it's difficult because, especially with something like civil engineering, so any kind of professional writing or like copywriting or whatever you want to call it, marketing writing type of position, very few writers are going to be experts in the field that they're writing for. It's just not how it works, right? And very few experts in these different fields are great at writing. They don't need to be, right? They're great at what they're doing. So when I worked in my previous roles, they were also pretty technical. And I had definitely made some mistakes coming into those jobs, sort of like being bigger than my bridges, like thinking I kind of had it all figured out and that I didn't really need that much help or direction. But learned pretty quickly that you have to just like really rely on a lot of other people for help, and that you have to do a lot of your own like research in your own time. So if you want to be successful in this kind of role, you are going to have to put in like some outside work. You don't have to be an expert at engineering, but you have to at least understand the concepts enough that you can write eloquently about them. So like, I think someone probably called it this, like when I was researching how to get this kind of job, I remember reading a lot about what's called like just approaching things with a journalistic mindset. So like going in and being like investigative and curious and sitting down with as many people as you can and asking them questions and, you know, doing research in advance. So when you are asking them questions, you know enough about what you're asking that you're not asking them like elementary questions, but that like they can sit down and really explain difficult concepts to you. And it takes a lot of time. So like I was really lucky in this role in that my boss and leadership in general expected that it was going to take kind of a long time for me to be able to do what I'm doing now on my own. So when I first started my job, the people that I now write for, they would like write their own stuff originally. So like they would write an article, and I put that in air quotes. No one, people can't see my air quotes, but I do because, you know, it wasn't always maybe the best type of writing, but at least they would explain the like technical aspects of whatever it is we were writing about. And that way I didn't have to like figure out how to write about those concepts, but I would go through and just like do all the editing and make it sound more of a story and make it maybe a little more interesting to the layman, to the non-civil engineer. And so that part was fun, but now I've spent enough time there and I understand enough about our industry and what we do that I don't need the professional staff to do any of the work anymore. But it does take time. You have to be able to ask for help, and you have to like it. Like, I don't know. I like engineering. Like my brother's an engineer, my dad's an architect, my uncle is an engineer. I've grown up around all of these people, and they have very specific mindsets, and they operate in a way that's different than most other humans. But I find it really like intriguing and interesting. And there's something about like the directness of an engineer that I really enjoy. Like they will tell you if you're not doing a good job or they don't like what you're doing. They're just like, you know what you're going to get with them. And I think I appreciate that. So I do enjoy what I write about, which I think is important. Like you might, you know, I don't know, not everyone can work for like their dream company or like their favorite hobby or whatever.
Most people probably can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's a dream, right? Is that you would like go, like you want to go work for like their favorite sports team, or like I would love to go work for like an environmental agency or like REI or something, you know, like get to like write about something I really love to do in like my free time. But for the rest of us, you know, there's all these other companies that need good writers, and that if you can like find a way to be curious about the work you're writing about, you might actually find that you'd be surprised at how much you can enjoy it.
So I want to talk about a specific piece that you sent and kind of get into the weeds, talk about the process of writing it. And that piece is called The Village of Mugwanago, Awarded for Economic Development. Can you kind of talk about start to finish, soup to nuts, A to Z, what went into doing that specific piece?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's something I don't really think about because it's just something you do, right? My process is slow. It's a slow process. And you know this about me, but I like to sit with something for a long time before it really comes together. So I'm heavy on the research kind of person. I like to spend a lot of time getting to know what I'm writing about. That is not always possible or productive or efficient, depending on, my work. A lot of times that means me doing work that I'm not getting paid for. I might just like work outside of my work hours to be able to kind of like be where I need to be with my subject and feel confident when I'm writing about it. But for that piece, I was actually really close to already because I had worked with the village for like 3 or 4 months right at the beginning of quarantine, actually, to help them apply for an award with the International Council of Economic Development. I think that's the association or the organization that gave them the award. But it was a really sort of like arduous process, and it was really it just took a long time to really like be able to work with a lot of different people who were like associated with this project. So the project was a business park in the village of Mukwonago, and the village is like really, really dedicated to economic development. And they had a local business that was going to leave the village because they needed to expand, and the village didn't have any like shovel-ready sites for them to move into. And they wanted to stay in the village, but they needed to move quickly because they needed to be able to, expand quickly. They just had like a really quick rise, which was awesome, but the village wanted to keep their business. And so my firm is the village engineer for Mukwonago. And what that means is that like essentially small communities will hire firms to be their like engineer, and they will do all of the like minute and larger project details within the community. So they'll like do all the municipal engineering. But we worked together and we like finished this business park at a crazy fast amount of time. Like it should have taken just like 3 times as long, but they really wanted to keep this business in the village. So they like figured out a way to make it happen. So it was actually kind of a cool story to work on. And I got to be a part of it pretty early on. So when I wrote the article you're referring to, it's actually really easy because I had already been really close to that project. So I probably, I generally would I brainstorm a lot. I take a lot of like really sloppy notes. I've never been able to like be a person who can write like an organized outline. I'm so envious of people who can. Like even in college, when you had to like turn in an outline, it's very difficult for me. I
always did the outline after the fact.
Yeah, right?
I would write it, and then afterwards I would do the outline and just sort of, because it rang pretty false to me. I'm not an outline person either.
Me neither. I'm not an outline person. I like to write. I'll just write free form or just like scribble out my thoughts, kind of like write a lot of bad stuff before anything's good. And then if I'm being smart about my process, then I will start to like pick out what's actually interesting. I think maybe this is true for many writers, but it's certainly true for me. I can become married to things I write that don't need to stay in my writing. So like if I write a really great sentence and I like this sentence and I think it's like the best sentence, but it actually doesn't add to the piece, right? It's not that important. My readers are probably not going to care about what it is. They're not going to read it and think it's the best sentence ever. I'll have to go through and find those moments where I need to sort of edit myself out and remember who I'm writing for and the audience I'm writing for. And then if it's something that's going on the web, I'll go through and do SEO. So search engine optimization, which is just kind of like figuring out what the main goal of my writing is, what kind of audience I want to see, and then like how to find keywords that will like help us rank higher in search. So in that case, it was probably like economic development or like business parks or municipal engineering, like things that I would imagine that like our ideal clients would be searching and then would be able to find our content by searching that. So that's something that I'll do towards the end after I sort of like craft the content. But yeah, I think I spend most of my time in like the early stages, like the research, like getting a accompanied stage, drafting, just like kind of free flow drafting, and then going through and like finding the story, finding out how I can make it semi-interesting, and then than editing.
Yeah, I was going to ask about editing. So you're ghostwriting for engineers who are, generally speaking, not the strongest writers. There's probably exceptions where you're at.
Some of them are very good, yeah.
Some of them are very good, but generally. When it comes to incorporating feedback from non-writers or people that are less inclined when it comes to writing, how do you navigate that process? And is it ever frustrating, incorporating feedback, things like that?
Feedback from the engineers.
Yeah, specifically, yeah.
That is something that has also really evolved, I think, throughout my career. So I would say early on, I would probably be pretty easily offended. Especially when you know that what you're creating is good. If you're proud of your writing and you know what you're giving them is good. And if they are maybe giving you feedback that in your opinion is making the work less.
Yeah. Inferior. Yeah.
Inferior. And honestly, I've not had many examples of that at my current job. So in previous roles, it was something I struggled with a lot. I had an executive in a previous job who wanted me to write all of their communications and then, proceeded to just rewrite them every time. And I was always very confused as to why they wanted me to sort of write it in the first place and then, rewrite it. And it's frustrating because you get defensive in that everybody at your company knows you're the writer. So if someone's editing your writing and then putting it out into the world, I was always people are going to think that I wrote this.
Yeah.
I did it. This isn't me. They changed it. They made it bad. It was way better before. That used to be something that really bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sort of realized, or was forced to realize that if you want to do this job, you just have to remove yourself from that and remember that it's not your name on it. It's the company or it's this other professional. And if they want to change it, that's their prerogative and it's not about you. So that all being said, that I'm very lucky right now in that I have a really good relationship with most of the professional staff that I write for and with our executive team. So I find that if I'm putting my best foot forward, I very rarely get feedback that I find unnecessary. It's usually feedback that is probably needed or is technical feedback. So it might be something that I misunderstood from an engineering aspect. And then that obviously needs to be correct. So maybe it's not that I've actually matured and have gotten better at taking feedback. Maybe it's just that I get less of it now.
You're in a better situation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I like to think, I've really just evolved and I don't get as frustrated when my boss changes my writing. But maybe the truth is that it just doesn't happen as much. So who knows?
Who knows? In terms of the piece we were talking about earlier, how many rounds of edits do you typically go through for something like that?
I mean, that article probably one.
Okay.
So do you mean just myself or with the team?
Passing along to other people.
Okay. Yeah, probably just one. So I will do my own heavy editing. But I wouldn't even say that that's kind of just, I edit as I write for sure. So I will start writing and then I'll go through and I'll spend, and sometimes it's problematic because I'll just spend a really long time trying to make one sentence the way I want it. It's something that I have to continuously work on and just okay, you can move on. And if you have time, you can come back to this. You need to finish this piece in a certain amount of time. Because I will sit and just really, really work at it and spend a lot of time at it. So I really don't do much editing after I'm done. And then in a piece like that, that's relatively short. And then also I'm already really, really familiar with the content. Usually that at that point it's just going to my team and my boss, and they will prove for just general errors.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any spelling or punctuation errors, that's really it. At that point, they're probably not editing for content. So not much, which is nice.
How many hours in total for something like that piece? Really getting into the weeds here. Process.
You are. I keep thinking I hope that no one at my job ever listens to it.
Well, it's only going to be a problem if you say 20 minutes or something, Well,
nothing. It's obvious. Honestly, the problem is the opposite because okay. I am slow. I'm a slow worker. So it'd be really hard for me to give you an accurate estimate as to the amount of time. I would say like, I would say for that piece, because I had spent so much time with that project before I had to write it, probably only took a couple hours.
Okay.
Like for something like that, because I like knew the project like the back of my hand. And it was like a really cool project that I was proud of. And I was proud that we helped the village win that award. It was kind of a big deal. It's a national award and it's a small community in Wisconsin. So like that was a really fun thing to be able to show how this community is doing like all this amazing stuff to really like keep businesses in Wisconsin and keep businesses like in their community. So it made it a little easier because I was passionate about it. But if it was a project that I had to research from the very beginning, I don't know, man, I can spend a long time reading about stuff before I decide to work. It's bad. Like I need to, it's not something I recommend. You have to know when to stop. But I just want to like I like that. I love the research. I could take 20 hours to write one article. Wow. Don't tell my boss.
Oh, he's one of our favorite listeners, in fact.
Probably. We all get, well, you better just not use.
Haven't released any episodes yet, but I'm just guessing.
We all get like little notifications when certain things come up. But
okay.
No, but like I would say what the amount of time I should be spending if I was like doing work the way I should be, 5 to 6 hours.
Okay. That seems pretty standard. So your writing in general, you sent me the samples. I read through them. You write very clearly about complex topics.
You told me it was bad.
This is the time I wanted to get into some typos I found. No big deal. No,
I would cry if you found typos.
You're writing clearly about complex topics, but still injecting sort of some creativity and fun into the pieces. Specifically some kind of fun phrasing. Things like shovel ready, which maybe is an industry term. I've heard you use that a couple times. Okay. Yeah. But to me, it's very fun and sort of creative. I've never heard shovel ready before.
God bless you for like going through that and finding something that was.
Okay. Well, here's another one. Caught between a rock and a hard place.
Okay. So
that's not that is not an industry term.
And I didn't write that sentence actually, because it's my personal opinion that maybe that's like a little bit of an overused phrase.
Okay.
And I don't think that like, that would be something that I would actually really want. But the person who did write that is somebody that I really like at my job and is generally a very good writer. So this person will do a lot of their own writing. And then I'll just kind of come in and do more heavy editing.
Well, I liked it. Can we get them on the mic so I can ask them the question?
Yeah, they would love that. But no, you can ask a question because I understand the point. Sorry.
The point what I'm getting at is, injecting creativity into pieces that are more cut and dry. Is that something that you're consciously doing, or does it just sort of happen on its own?
Sorry for busting your chops out in the middle of your question, by the way, and
That's okay.
Really breaking up your nice examples. They were good examples. I do definitely like try to consciously insert creativity into the writing. I would say if anything, I have to really kind of work harder to not overdo it because it doesn't always lend to the type of writing that I'm doing. So if it's something that is going to go into the media, so the public media, then it's something that like is a little bit more of a focus to make sure that it's really legible and that like just the average person could pick it up and read it and enjoy it and understand what we were talking about. But for a lot of our pieces of writing that are more technically focused and that are maybe going out to industry professionals or other experts, like I have to try to keep it pretty technical and pretty on point. So I can kind of fluff stuff up a little bit more than is necessary because it's, as a writer, that's what you want to do. Like you want to write stuff that is fun.
Yeah, a little poetic, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Got to keep that active voice going. But I try to do that. I think it's appreciated. Like I think that when you can make civil engineering a little bit more exciting, generally people tend to like be grateful that you're doing it and they like to read it more and they find it fun and exciting. So yeah.
Are there examples of? Can you think of specific examples where there was maybe a line or something where a boss or engineer was like, hey, maybe dial this down a little bit?
Yeah.
All the time.
All the time. That's my whole life. Yes, absolutely. And it's fine. They're usually right. which
Yeah.
is very frustrating because I don't ever want to admit that. But normally when I'm getting that kind of feedback, it's accurate feedback. Like my boss will love to be like, is this necessary? I'm like, yeah, obviously everything is necessary. I put it there, which is necessary.
Was this alliteration necessary? These three consecutive S words in a row? It feels kind of superfluous.
Do you really need 19 adjectives in one paragraph? Yeah, I freaking do. Lordy, yes. Everything. I mean, and can be very irritating. I like working from home has been a savior in times like those because I can sit here on the other side of a computer screen and be like giving the middle finger and like be a little baby about it and then collect myself, maybe like ask myself why I'm getting that feedback and then make the, very rarely will I argue against it. Sometimes I just won't make the change. So like I've been given enough authority over my writing to override some suggestions. So like if it's coming from my boss and not the person who I'm writing for, I might just not make a suggestion. Wow. But if it's coming from the person I'm writing for, then I will because it has their name attached to it. Mm-hmm. So I should do what they want it to.
You mentioned working from home. In terms of writing styles and getting writing done, is there a big difference in how you attack pieces doing them at home versus doing them in the office, or would you say it's more or less kind of the same?
I don't know if there's a difference in how I attack them.
And by attack, I mean start.
I do. Yeah. I know. I get it. I liked it. See, you're embellishing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
How I get started, how I attack a piece of writing. I don't know that it changes based on where I am. There's some work that's much easier to complete at home. And then there's some work I think that lends itself to being in the office. So if I'm working on something that's like a little bit more technical, it's sometimes nice to be in the office because I can just like walk up to somebody and ask them questions and get feedback that way, which is sometimes a little bit easier. But if I have to sit down and really like get into the weeds, like if I'm at that part in my process where I have to kind of like really write it out and get everything down on paper and start to think like really systemically about how this is going to look, I do better at home. It's just quiet. And then like also like formatting and editing, it's sometimes just easier to be at home because you're not getting interrupted. And, I struggle with my, attention span in a very serious way. So when I'm interrupted, it can really take a long time for me to get back to where I was. And then, I need to kind of be able to stay in that place for a good enough amount of time in order to be productive.
That makes sense. How do you measure success in your work writing? And those dollar and cents, probably. The paper.
How do I measure success? Well, we do have like all sorts of metrics that we are looking at. So from a purely like statistical standpoint, obviously like how many clicks are my articles getting? How many people are reading it? Are people sharing it? We do a newsletter every month. So like, are people opening the newsletter? Are they clicking on the articles in the newsletter? Are pieces that I'm sending out getting picked up by trade publications? Are we able to get our press into the media? So there's a lot of that, just kind of like general, like, are people interested in it? Are people reading it? Are people staying on the page long enough to actually read it? Are they on the page for 5 seconds and then just like bouncing right off of it? So we look at a lot of numbers and data that way. There's also a sales aspect to it. So, I'm the kind of writing I do, if you're like familiar with the marketing funnel, is very much like at the top of the marketing funnel. So most of my writing is either, educating our ideal customer about what we do, or then like sort of in the nurturing stage where you're just kind of like trying to keep them interested and provide them really good information. So we're like more at the point where we're kind of like trying to qualify sales leads. But like the end of the day, we are a consulting firm and the goal is going to be to get business. And so the number one measure of success is, does it influence our work? So like if there's ever a time where a piece of writing or something that we're a part of is something that like helps us get a new client or a new job, then that's like the ultimate measure of success.
How would do you find that out just word of mouth, or how is that kind of measured?
Everyone tracks their leads. So like we have a CRM system, and that's, I think, like customer relations management. I'm pretty sure that's what that stands for, maybe client relations management, but CRM is like Salesforce, that type of thing. So like we have a client management system that we use, and any new work that comes in needs to be tagged to like a different project or a different like marketing project. So every campaign, like marketing campaign that we do, we create a campaign number for. And ideally, if a client manager or somebody at the firm gets contacted as a result of a marketing campaign, they should be tagging that work to a certain project number. Also, like we have some stuff behind like an email wall. So like we'll keep certain content locked behind an email. And so that way, like we'll know if somebody from a certain firm or community reached out to us because of like downloading a white paper or a PDF or something like that.
That would be a big win for marketing when that happens. Yeah.
And it happens sometimes. Like, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, you know this very well as being, because you're in the industry, but it's kind of hard to measure marketing success. Like it's hard to measure the success of social media, brand recognition, and, developing an expert voice and, building your web presence. Those are all things that are really, really necessary, but like you can't always show like a clear cut, like ROI.
Yep.
Like, this is exactly the dollar amount you're going to get back because of the work that I'm doing.
Despite the fact that people continually want it.
Yeah, absolutely. But when we do that and we get to do that, it is cool because it makes you feel like you're really, really making an impact. And the more that happens, the less I feel like you have to kind of defend the work you want to be doing that maybe they don't see as always like the most necessary or just like impactful to the bottom line, because they don't maybe understand like why content marketing and social media marketing and PR is so important in the long run.
I think that's a pretty common theme for a lot of marketing teams at businesses that don't, deal specifically in the kind of industry. But kind of start to wind it down here. A couple more questions. Next question is, what's your favorite thing you've worked on at your current workplace, or what's something you're quite proud of?
Such a good question. I did read these before, but I just didn't really they hit differently when you say them.
I saw you read them, and you were reading them while the TV was on and your phone was in your hand. So
now you distracted me from my answer because you're making fun of me. But my favorite piece, there's a few things that I think I'm really proud of. A lot of it would be like stuff I've done for external clients. So helping the Village of Mukwonago win that award is definitely one of them. It was a project that I really got to manage on my own and had very little help internally on. So that was kind of fun. It was like one of the first times I was trusted to work with our clients. Like we have specific people who are client contacts, and that's for a reason, right? Like our clients are our bread and butter and they give us all of our money. And so if you are somebody who maybe doesn't, if you're not like familiar with the client, or if you say something wrong, or, like,
an abrasive person.
Totally. Like there's some people who just, it's not their thing, like working with the clients. They do great work otherwise, but they don't need to be client facing for all sorts of reasons. So the firm is very careful about who is having those contacts with clients. So this was one of the first times that I was sort of trusted to be able to do that on my own without like being babysat by somebody else. And that was really cool and fun. And it turned out really well because they actually won 2 awards. They won the gold and silver in 2 different categories. So that was awesome. And again, it was like a national recognition. So that part was sweet. Otherwise, like there's a few campaigns right now that I'm working on that I'm really excited about. There's some new money coming into to states and to communities for infrastructure, and it's going to give communities an opportunity to really improve essential infrastructure, improve their roads, improve their water supply, get rid of lead pipes, all of these things that are actually like really impactful in communities. And I've been able to kind of really like dive into some of that and write about it, and talk about how, communities can use the resources they have to really build up their infrastructure and bounce back from COVID loss, because they've lost revenue in all sorts of ways, whether it's businesses closing down and losing tax dollars that way, or, utilities have lost a lot of money because they haven't been able to collect on people who are past due, which, like, of course, I think it's wonderful. Like, I think it's great that people who have been struggling have been able to, have some relief from their payments, but also these utilities, like, they rely on that money to be able to keep your water on. Like, that infrastructure needs to be taken care of somehow. So it's like a difficult situation when they don't have enough money, and now they're going to be able to get some finally. So they're getting some relief, and we'll be able to take on some new projects. So that's been really fun to kind of get to work on things that like actually make a difference.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's fortunate because when I hear civil engineering, I don't immediately jump to, like saving the world or something like that.
Yeah.
And working, you could do marketing in a lot of different places, and it wouldn't necessarily have, marketing for Aeropostale isn't going to have the same impact,
Yeah, it's cool, especially because the bulk of our work is municipal engineering. So we work directly for communities. We work in the public sector. We don't do a lot of private work. So we're like private development companies we do some, but it's not the bulk of what we do right now. So the bulk of what we do is just for like municipal governments. And yeah, that's cool because they actually are, doing all sorts of crazy stuff that you never ever would think about.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like where your sewage goes and like how it's cleaned. And
I try not to think about that. So second to last question. I'm gonna count down the last two.
Okay.
What advice would you give to a burgeoning marketing writer, marketing professional, kind of fresh out of college, that wants to, succeed, find happiness in the role?
I would say that this is probably the advice that everybody else would give them as well, but just like write as much as you can. Like if, I found it very hard to figure out how to build a portfolio without the experience. And I think everybody struggles with that. Like, how am I going to create enough work to get hired? So if you're lucky enough to like get hired on as an intern or something like that, that's probably not a problem, because if you're being given an opportunity to like create some professional pieces, that might actually get you noticed by companies hiring. But there are a lot of writers out there, right? Like you and I have been told probably ever since we were in school, like, oh yeah, you and everybody else, like, oh, you want to be a writer? Like, oh yeah, okay, like so does everybody. Like there's a lot of like negativity in that space, but there's not a lot of good writers. Like I think that that's like a misconception, because a lot of people want to do it, but not a lot of people, like work at it and are really good at it. So I think like just write as much as you can, like write for free, volunteer for like nonprofits who are looking for people to like run their social media or to like write a blog post once a week. Like even if they're not paying you, getting that like portfolio building experience, I think is super important. I think people say like start a blog. I wish I was ever able to keep one. It never stuck for me. I tried, started and stopped many a times, but I think people who can maintain a blog and do it well, like have such a leg up, because you're writing out into the world all the time. So you'll be able to show your work that way. You just have to be able to put your money where your mouth is. Like no one's going to care about your education. Like they will care that you have a degree. I don't think they'll really care what it's in. I mean, they say they want communications, marketing, English, journalism, but like if you can show them that you can actually write for a different kind of audience, they'll hire you. And like there's so many free resources out there. There's just no reason to like not be an expert in whatever it is you want to do. So like I took every HubSpot class I could find. Like I watched so many videos. I read like blogs all the time to kind of like stay up on it. I think just like make sure that you're like educating yourself outside of whatever school has given you, because it might not be exactly what you want to do or what you're looking for. Just the more you can create, the better. And then, you get rejected a lot. Like if you can get your stuff published, even better. So you can like write and get stuff submitted. I mean, like it's been so fun to watch you like just churn content out and get published all the time. Basically a publishing powerhouse. But that takes a lot of work. And you like, for every piece that you get accepted, you've had 5 that maybe weren't accepted, and like, or more, who knows? So you have to kind of get comfortable with rejection. You have to get really comfortable with feedback. So just like whatever you got to do to learn to not take things personally. Always easier said than done. I still take a lot of things personally when I get feedback, but like, that's just going to be the way it is. So get comfortable with that. But I think it's a cool job. If you're somebody who likes to write and wants to be able to do that for your career, and not just in a creative, publishing essays, poetry, novels, like if you want to do it from a different standpoint, something that's really fun and fulfilling and attainable.
I think your mention of the portfolio is pretty apt, because especially for us, coming out of grad school with a degree in English, there's no useful marketing samples. I can show you like a paper on Citizen Kane that's 19 pages.
35 pages on Citizen Kane. You got it.
Yeah. You want to know my thoughts on Moby Dick? I can tell you. But in terms of solid, hard samples, it takes a long time to kind of build those up and get quality ones. And it does result in a lot of just like writing things solely so they can go in your portfolio with no other purpose.
Imagining that you have a client, pick the person you want to write for, and then just like write stuff for that. Mm-hmm. I did that so many times, okay, I don't know, maybe this is somebody who I'd like, and this is what I think they might want to read. And then you do that. And also like what Joe would tell us, our favorite professor, just like read everything.
Yep.
Right? Like you have to read the kind of writing you want to write, and you just have to like consume as much as you possibly can, because that is like the one thing that will actually make you, writing a lot and reading a lot are going to actually make you a better writer.
Yeah, definitely agree. All right, Kirsten, winding things down here. Anything you want to plug? Where's your work at? Where can people find you, et cetera, et cetera?
I wish I was somebody who had things to plug. No, I want to plug you. Everybody go find Google Adam Dietz, read all of his awesome, sweet content online. He wrote a book, super bomb. He did not have me on this podcast so I could plug his work, but
no, I did not.
I'm a big cheerleader over here. I'm very proud. On my end, I'm always thinking about how I need to creatively really start putting some stuff out there. But like I said, I work slow, so it'll happen one day. I think I don't know if it'll be writing either, and maybe it'll be art, or I don't know. But no one, you guys can't find me anywhere. If you really want to get a hold of me and ask me questions, please do. I think that you can probably reach me through the podcast notes. Maybe you can put email in there or something.
Yep, definitely.
Totally happy to answer whatever question, but I am not out in the ether.
No.
Stay tuned. Maybe one day.
Stay tuned. Yeah. An Etsy shop in your future?
Etsy shop in my future. Yeah.
Etsy shop 2022.
Yes.
Thanks so much for coming on, Kirsten. It was a pleasure having you. I learned a lot about marketing, which either means I don't know enough or you just know a significant amount. But either way, I think it was a very insightful conversation. I think people are going to enjoy it. So I look forward to going to the ball game tonight, and I'll buy you a hot dog. How about that?
Finally. All, all I've ever asked for.
Thanks
for having me. That was super fun.
All right. Bye.
Bye.